Welcome to part 3.5 on solving a cube blindfolded with M2 for the edges. In part 3 I forgot to explain some important rules or cases for solving the edges, and I'm going to go over those right now, and they're really important. You encounter them like, what, 100% of every solve, so you really need to pay attention and stop eating. Alright, if you remember in part 2, dealing with solving the corners with old Pochmann, I told you that if you have an odd number of y-perms when solving the corners, then you're going to have a parity. And in order to deal with the parity, I told you to turn the cube to the right, so now blue's on front, and do an r-perm. Now, just as a note, it doesn't matter which way you do it, but this is what the parity is pretty much, so you do whatever you can, what you normally would to solve this. So you could still keep turning it to the right and doing the r-perm, but what I do is instead I just do u, so red stays on front, and then the r-perm. It doesn't matter, you can choose either way. Now, you continue on solving the edges like you normally would, and if you did have a corner parity, so if you did an odd number of y-perms, then this is what the cube should look like at the end. And you might be wondering, oh, okay, what did I do wrong? Well, you didn't do anything wrong. This is what it's supposed to look like. Yellow will be on top and orange on front. Don't do M2. So you're not supposed to do that. It's supposed to look like this. And in order to solve this, you have to use this algorithm. U prime F2, U, M2, U prime F2, U. And then you can see we have the R perm again. So then you do U, R perm. And you're done. So, as a summary, if you are solving the corners and you have an odd number of y-perms, or an odd number of corners needing to be solved, then you're going to do the r-perm, as I showed you in part 2, and you're going to solve the edges. Now, once you've done the edges, you're going to have what I just showed you. Yellow is going to be on top, and orange on front, and you're going to do exactly what I also, once again, just showed you. So it'll look like this. Do that first algorithm, and then the r-perm, and you're done. That's how you deal with the parity for M2. Now, the next really important rule with M2 is dealing with the 4 edges in the middle layer of the cube. Here's the middle layer, and there are two on top and 2 edges on the bottom that are in the middle layer. Now, there's a little rule you have to follow when you're trying to solve these edges, and yellow is on top, orange on front, so the centers are flipped. As I said, every time you solve one edge in M2, the centers get flipped around, and I'll show you that right now. Red's on. This is the red green, so it belongs right here because red's on front, green's on the left. So we're gonna solve this edge like we normally would with by setting this one up to the buffer, U prime, L prime, U. M2 to solve it, undo that, so it's solved. Now the centers are flipped as they normally would be, and we look down here and see where this has to go. This is the yellow-orange, which is one of the 4 middle layer edges, because this normally belongs down here, because yellow is on the bottom, orange on the back. So this normally belongs here, except the centers are flipped, and it belongs in the middle layer. So the rule is, when the centers are flipped, you can see that the middle layer edges have to go to different positions. The yellow-orange actually has to go up here now, because that's where the yellow-orange centers are. So in order to solve this, we would have to get this sticker to here with U2 M prime, U2 M prime. Even though it normally belonged back here, you can see it did go there even by doing the opposite algorithm. So as a summary, when the centers are flipped around, so you just did an edge, if the next edge belongs in the middle layer, you have to do the opposite algorithm of what you normally would. So I'll show you another example. So we're going to do the first edge, solving like we normally would. This is the yellow of yellow-blue. So we're going to solve this one to here, like we normally would, bring this to the buffer with U prime, or U, R2, U prime, M2, undo that. And now we look here, and this is the red of red-white. So knowing that red's normally on front, white's on the top, you'd think this belongs right here. But since it belongs in the middle layer, and the centers are flipped because we just did one, you can see the red of red-white actually belongs back here. So we have to do the algorithm to get this one to here, which would be M2D. There we go. If you forgot the algorithms, you can go back to part 3. I posted them in the description. So there is one exception to that rule, which is that if you're solving in the... hold on, I'll just show you in a sec. Okay, so we do one edge, the red-green, and the next one is orange-white. And orange-white normally belongs back here, which is in the middle layer, except the rule is if you ever have the orange-white edge you're trying to solve, it's the exact same algorithm you use no matter what. So even though the centers are flipped, we're going to use the same algorithm to get this orange back here, which would be this. And we're done. I try my best to explain that. It's kind of confusing and hard to do on video, but if you still don't understand it, then go to like Stefan Pochmann's website or look at some other videos. And done. Now the next little important thing you need to know is what to do when you're solving the edges and the buffer piece gets solved. So you look down here to see where it goes, and it's already in place. It's the exact same thing you do with the corners when the buffer corner gets solved. You just pick one of the unsolved edges to switch it with, and you continue like we normally would. Now, when you choose one of these unsolved edges, you have to remember which one you chose, because that's how you know when you're going to be done. So there are 3 ones here that I can choose because the buffer's solved, so I'll just pick this one, let's say. So I'm going to solve this like pretending that this needs to go here. So I'm going to set this up to here with U prime L prime U, switch it, undo. And now we're going to continue solving the edges like we normally would, remembering this is the one we chose to switch it with. So this one goes to here, this one goes down here, this one is the red of red-green, which belongs here. Now we got back to the edge we chose to switch it with, because red's on front normally, green's on the left. So once we get this to here again, we know we're going to be done. So the rule is, if the buffer edge is solved, choose any unsolved edge to switch it with, and once you get back to it, you're done. Now the exact same rule applies for if the buffer's here but it's flipped. It doesn't matter if it's not actually solved, as long as it's in between the right centers here, you still choose any random edge to switch it with. It will get flipped back as long as you do everything properly. So even though this is flipped wrong, but it's still in the right place, we'll choose any edge to switch it with. So let's pick this one. Actually, no, let's pick this one. So it doesn't matter. I'm just giving another example of a setup move. So we'll choose this one to switch it with. So we'll solve that, and we continue like we normally would. This is the example of the second rule I showed you. The centers are flipped, and it normally belongs here, except since the white's on the bottom now, red on the back, this goes to here. Keep going like we normally would, and now we're back to the orange-green, which is the one we switched it with. Even though we switch it with this side, as long as we get back to that edge position, it will be done. So this goes to here, set that up with U prime L U, and we're done. Now, the last little special case when solving the edges is how to fix edges like this that are in place but flipped wrong. Because when you get a scrambled cube, they're not all going to be, not everything's going to work out perfectly. Some can already be solved but flipped wrong. So before I start explaining that, how to deal with it, I'm going to show you the algorithm you're going to need to flip 2 edges in place. So that algorithm is M prime U, M prime U, M prime U2, M U, M U, M U2. So you can see it flipped the top front and the top back edges in place. And that's what we're going to use to solve flipped edges like this. Okay, so actually, if you continue to solve this cube with like you normally would blindfolded, this is what it's going to end up like at the end. There's the flipped that edge. There's the flipped edge, and the buffer is going to be flipped too, because the way it goes is whenever you have one flipped edge like this on the cube, the buffer will be flipped at the end too. You don't have to worry. That's how it works out. So in order to solve this, we're going to use the algorithm I just showed you. So we know it flips the top front and top back edges, except this one's solved, so we don't want to mess that up. So to deal with that, we're just going to turn the cube like this. So now both flipped edges are top front and top back. Now that we use the algorithm, it flips the top front and top back edges, and we're done. Now, it's not always going to be the red right that's going to be flipped, so you can't just always turn it this way and flip these two like that. In this case, it's the orange blue back here that's flipped wrong. So when we continue solving the cube like we normally would, I'm just setting it up to show you. When we continue solving it, it'll look like this. So there's the incorrectly flipped edge, the orange blue, and the buffer's flipped like normal. So in order to solve this, we have to bring them both on, we have to bring them both onto the same face so that when we turn the cube in whatever way, they'll be on the top front and top back. What I would do is I would bring the orange blue right here where the white red normally is by doing R prime U. So now the flipped edges are right here and we can flip them. I'm running out of time, so then we undo that. So that's the best I can explain that. You're just going to try and get the unflipped edges on the top front and top back positions. Use the algorithm to flip these two or do any rotation you want as long as you undo that properly. And you should be good. Leave a comment if you're confused because I kind of had to rush this because whatever. So part 4 will be coming soon on how to memorize the corners and edges, and yes, good luck.